What is up, fellow sickos? I'm Dan Favale coming at you with a super brief intro before we have our Los Angeles Clippers look ahead. I have Justin Russo back. He covers the Los Angeles Clippers and the LA Sparks for his Substack. Find that link in the YouTube and podcast description. We recorded this on Tuesday night. The news about Kawhi Leonard, the Clippers, the now defunct environmental company where they allegedly were able to circumvent the salary cap by paying him out $28 million. That report from Pablo Torre finds out with some follow-up stuff from The Athletic. We recorded it all before this happened. I will record a separate podcast if anything really comes of this. As of right now, the league is investigating. The Clippers deny it. Steve Ballmer denies it. We'll see how this plays out. It's objectively funny, so hopefully you appreciate the title of this episode as well as the thumbnail, I believe, that I'll be making for it. But just wanted to give you a heads up. We didn't ignore it. It was just recorded like 12 hours or something before the news actually broke. But let's get to some actual basketball talk. What is up, fellow sickos? I'm Dan Favale coming at you with another 2025-2026 NBA season look ahead. We are on to those pesky Los Angeles Clippers, which means for the third straight year running, I have the distinct pleasure of being joined by Justin Russo. He covers the Clippers as well as the LA Sparks and some soccer too for his Substack, the link to which will be in the podcast and YouTube description. Go subscribe to him. He's awesome. You can find him on the social machines at FlyByNight. Night is spelled Knite. Justin, welcome back. Before I ask how you're doing, a PSA. This is your third time here. So as I tell everyone who's been on at least 3 times, it's now your fault. The first 2 times you could do me a solid. You don't know what you're in for. Now it's your fault. How the heck are you doing? Welcome back.
Well, it's not the first time I've heard something's been my fault. So, this is natural for me. I'm doing good, man. It's been a long 12 months, but, as you said, covering the WNBA, covering soccer, it's given me, as we talked about before going live, it's given me a nice little reinvigoration into covering the world of the NBA. So, the Clippers are going to be exciting, and I'm thrilled to be talking about them.
Yeah, that's not what I said last year going into this, being thrilled about the Clippers. I was going back through my notes while I was putting together this year's outline, and I predictably destroyed them for everything they did. They just go out, and they were probably, they had to be the NBA's biggest surprise. So for you, covering the team and, following them so intimately, what was kind of the biggest revelation or takeaway for you from how last season unfolded?
I think when I talked to you last year, I think I pegged them at 43 wins, and they got to 50.
I probably had them lower. Yeah, I was probably they're going to get 20. I don't remember what the number was, but I was probably in the 30s at best.
They look, I don't care internally, or they'll tell you they expected to be good last year. They did not expect to be 50-win good. But the biggest revelation for me was just, and I guess it shouldn't have been when looking at the offseason they had last year, but seriously, just how hard they played every night. It wasn't, there was very few nights they just were all right, we don't have it tonight, let's pack it up. It was, we're just going to compete, our tails off for 48 minutes every night and just let's see what happens. And it worked.
The thing that struck me, and I think we talked about this, you could see it going in, was that I want to start here because before we get into the nitty-gritty basketball stuff of it all, given the way that they've structured their books, just looking at this, the deals that they've signed and what they could do next summer in the summer of 2027, what should we be, how deeply should we be reading into that? Do they view this as just, a placeholder team that can be super competitive in the meantime? Or is this, I don't want to say a core they're prepared to mortgage everything to continue building around, but if opportunities present themselves, they will look to improve it? Because that's what, they come off this 50-win season. They're the biggest surprise. They make moves everyone likes, but they also seem very geared towards what we're planning for 2027 and beyond.
Yeah, this is oddly enough, this has just been their plan for the last couple of years too. When they lost PG last summer, and we were here talking about it, their plan was always we're going to look 2 years into the future. And last year they played with house money and it worked. This year they're kind of just they did the soft pivot of let's actually. Hey, maybe we're not that far off from actually competing based on what they saw last year in the postseason. Them and Denver go 7 games. Several of those games could have gone either way. And then you see what Denver and OKC did against each other. It's maybe it gave them a false sense of, hey, we're not that far off. Maybe we're a little bit closer. And if we just get a guy here and a guy there, they've never once deviated from their thought process of 26 and 27 are the summers they're aiming for. Granted, the summer of 26 took a brief hit with Luka re-signing with the Lakers. But, as Keith Smith loves to say on Twitter, cap space isn't just for signing free agents.
Well, it can't be anymore because of the free agents that are available, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, as we've seen over the last couple of years, is outside the PG situation where he obviously left and got $220 million or $250 million, whatever it was, you just don't see high-profile free agents leave anymore.
Was
for
Jalen
like that,
Brunson like the biggest of the? And he wasn't even billed as that type of player when it happened in 2020. I'm trying to think of. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody.
I guess it would be
aside
Miles
from-
Turner, right? Like Miles Turner was pretty big, pivoting
Yeah.
from Indy to Milwaukee, but
How
also
many- zero career All-Star. That's not. I love Miles Turner. That's not even
Yeah.
someone who's made an All-Star game. We're talking like that was a pretty big free agency move.
so. Like, yeah, actually, like the last multi-time All-Star. If you push PG to the side, I don't know who the last multi-time in their prime, like top-level dollar free agent who left was. I mean, Clay went to Dallas, but it wasn't. I don't even think
It's not
Golden
in his
State really.
prime, yeah.
Yeah, but Golden State also didn't really try to retain him.
It was
You
also
know,
a sign-in trade too. That I mean,
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
Folded into it too.
Yeah. So I don't. I mean, it's just the nature of the NBA now, where these teams have cap space and they figure out different ways to kind of leverage that into getting the players they want, whether it's through trade or however. It's just I think we've had to like change our thinking with free agency and like that much cap space. It's mostly just to facilitate trades, but also bring in lower level free agents that you can pay a little bit over what other teams can to then, so that when you trade for guys, you have pieces around them that kind of fit in a little bit better. So, I mean, but the Clippers, in the context of the Clippers, they're playing for 26 and they're playing for 27. Trae Young has a player option for 2026. I've seen his name. That will not shock me. I'm just going to say right now, this might sound crazy. I understand the situation. It would not shock me if a year from now you and I are doing a fourth year of this where you have me on and we're talking about Clipper starting point guard Trae Young. It just wouldn't shock me.
Wow.
I'm not saying they're going to get him, but I'm just saying the possibility of that, like, it's something that I can't sweep under the rug is like, oh, that's cute, but it's not going to happen. Like, we don't know. Things change.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by them and just sort of these other teams that have already made these bigger trades in the rear view, and they're still waiting for some of their draft picks to reaccumulate, because you're probably not going to have a young building block. Like, nobody's the Thunder, where you also have these young building blocks in tow. There are other teams like the Rockets that might be straddling that line, but then you also don't necessarily have the trade assets to go out and get that caps lock star if they become, like, the Clippers don't have the best package for a Giannis if he becomes available next summer, and they probably won't. If he becomes available next summer, excuse me. So does free agency come back around in that regard then? And I think the Clippers are also an interesting case because a team like them, the Lakers, even Miami, like when you're in those markets, cap space might actually mean something to you in free agency where it's not going to for a lot of these other teams, which has always been the case, but it feels like the difference is even starker now because of how few high-profile free agents are actually leaving.
Yeah, so next year they would have the ability, next offseason they have the ability to, I think it's trade 2 firsts and swap 2 firsts, because they can trade 20, 30, and 32, and then swap 31 and 33, I think is what they can do. So they'd have the ability to trade essentially 4 picks, but I also don't get the sense that they're in that mode right now of, hey, let's just go trade more picks. I mean,
Right.
they kind of want to see what's going to happen. I mean, asset-wise, yeah, they're a little strapped. I remember writing in the summer or a couple months ago when it started that you mentioned Giannis. The only way they're going to even get in the ballpark for Giannis is if he specifically says, I want to go to the Clippers. Like, that's literally it.
And even
Otherwise,
their best offer would be the type of offer that a team that's not on his list, or if it's the Bucks, Giannis, we know how the relationship plays into the politicking of all that, but if they wanted to just send him somewhere on a whim, they could probably get more than what he would have to go full on James Harden forcing his way to the Clippers, like for it to really happen.
Yeah, so that's why I kind of look at the Giannis thing as like, it's nice to think about, but that's not exactly the reality of the situation. But beyond that, it's kind of interesting because I know a lot's been made about the roster. I'm sure we'll get into it about like their age and all this stuff. But like they went out and got John Collins, who's like in his prime, and I feel like that gets kind of pushed under the rug, and like Zoo's in his prime, and that type of stuff. So it's kind of fascinating. I'm not going to use like the Warriors euphemism of 2 timelines, but it does feel like we're at here's the aging vets who are still really good. These guys in their prime who are probably going to have to punch above their weight a little bit to make everything work, but also they very well could.
So about the actual roster, watching them last year, I think for the most part what strikes you is how they were performing defensively. Their offseason has been fascinating to me, and I'm going to go back and forth here for a second because my first inclination is looking at what I think their starting 5 is going to be, and I think you agree that John Collins and Bradley Beal will both start. I found myself wondering if they then over-indexed on offense because now Kawhi, his defensive workload in the starting lineup feels like it's higher. I have all the respect in the world for what Zoo does defensively, but then I start to look at the bench, and I'm like, Brook Lopez, Derrick Jones Jr., Kris Dunn, like this team has defenders still. What have you made, though, of kind of the pivot to them leaning into the offense, and where do you land on that entire discussion that because I've gone back and forth to where I'm like, yeah, I think they might have gone too far, but then I'm like, well, maybe not really.
I'm glad you actually mentioned that, especially like looking at their bench and being like, well, actually, they still have defenders. Because I had this same conversation 2 months ago with a colleague, and we were having this like really in-depth conversation about their roster and like what it looks like. Because obviously, like you knew they were getting Bradley Beal at that point, and so he goes, like they kind of got away from their defensive identity, didn't they? And I was like, no, they just kind of pivoted because like of their top 8 minutes players last year, I believe it was, the 2 who left are Norman Powell and Amir Coffey, and those are offense first guys. Like those are their best shooters from last year, but those are offense first type players. So they still kept Derrick Jones, they still kept Kris Dunn, they added Brook Lopez, as you said. And all of a sudden, you look at them and you're like, you know what? They just kind of recalibrated because their problem in the playoffs was their defense-first guys were not respected offensively.
Right.
Like that was the big problem. If you look at their offensive numbers for the season after Kawhi came back, I want to say they were like top 8 in offense, but their defense took a little bit of a slip. But they still finished the year obviously really good defensively. It was just there was like not enough offensive ceiling to cover the defensive part of the equation where you had to play guys for defense, but teams weren't really respecting them. And so it kind of bogged things down for them a little bit offensively. And so I think what you've seen is they recalibrated a little bit to where, and this is my personal belief of watching basketball of lately. So this is just my thought on this. I think we've become too keyed in on that, or beholden to the idea that defense wins championships. I'm sure Nico Harrison is somewhere pumping his fist about what I just said. But I do think that offense is the great equalizer because defenders can get played off the floor. Offensive players who are great, it becomes very hard, even in a defensive setting where you're attacking them, to like play them off. Because their value on offense is so high. But if someone's value on defense is at the equal level of someone's offense, but they're not paid attention to on offense, it kind of can bog 4 other guys down where they're not able to pick up that slack. So I think the Clippers kind of just were like, let's increase the offensive firepower to take some of the workload off James. James had a very high workload last year. I think he was like top 5 in minutes or something, and he was
his
just
true usage too was like the highest it's been in years, which is just like, that's not where it should be when he's in his mid-30s.
And he got burnt out. Like by the end of the playoffs, he was burnt out. And look, I know people can make their James Harden playoff jokes, and that's fine, but that man was burnt out by the end of the playoffs. And he killed himself getting them into the playoffs at that point. And they need to protect Kawhi on offense a little bit because of his workload as well. And I also think it was a signal that they've searched, and I think incorrectly, for a third star abroad for like these last few years. They went and got James for Kawhi and PG. They obviously did the Russ thing with Kawhi and PG. They've done these different things of like these name guys. And so a lot of people are going to look at the Bradley Beal signing and think, well, Bradley Beal's the third star. I think they've stumbled organically onto a third star in Zoo, and I think that's what they're actually also basing these signings off of, which are, what if we get Zoo, another guard who can shoot, and a power forward in John Collins who can shoot and also roll and do these types of things, because Zoo's really good as a short roll passer, so he could hit John Collins on corner cuts and stuff. I think, and also Collins is a good rebounder, so everything's not on Zoo. So a lot of and getting Brook Lopez, we don't want to kill Zoo. Like, everything for the offseason, to me, mostly felt, how do we protect Zoo and not wear him out because of how vital he is to what they do on both ends?
How do you see that? How do you see what they have around him now, where they did run more things through him last year? How do you see his offensive role being impacted by like these new additions they've made, where it's specifically, I think, one, Bradley Beal's another ball handler that's integrated in the equation. And then two, this isn't as big of a problem because they are floor spacers, but like some of the times John Collins has struggled is, I don't think he's always at his best when he's not able to be used as the primary screener. And so when you're playing him with another big, I think it can work, but I don't know if that's where he's best optimized. And so I'm just curious as to see, like, are they going to try and get these guys independent minutes of Zoo as well? And then how do you just use Zoo when you have more offensive options around him? Is there a chance for he did a lot last year. I don't remember what he finished on the most improved player ballot, but it was probably too low. But he just did so much last year. I'm curious as to how this changes his offensive role.
I think, to the lineup thing, I think you'll see guys get individual time because they're going to need it. Like, you need to, the joke with the Clippers with media is tinkering Ty. Ty likes to tinker with lineups to figure out what can and cannot work. And so he'll spend the first half of the season trying to figure things out, which is fine. So I think you'll see that. I don't know what else Zoo can show. I think last year was arguably the best season a Clipper center's ever had, which I know, like, people are going to look at, like, DeAndre Jordan was third team All NBA one year and, like, first team All Defense. I think the year Zoo had was so much better. Like, the things he was able to do, he carried them offensively for stretches of games that was just remarkable. And adding Brad is going to take touches away from Zoo. But I'm also unsure how much, because Norm got a lot of touches. And that's, I don't know, it's not necessarily like for like, because Bradley's better on the ball than Norm was.
It feels like, and Norm Powell feels like a quicker, like, decision maker. He's not as good as a passer by any stretch, but he definitely feels like he's more of a quicker decision maker.
Yeah, so you might see the Clippers' offense be a little bit slower this year.
They're going to be like, what is transition? That word is not in our vocabulary.
Yeah. Well, actually, their answer to that is transition is John Collins. That's why we got him. And you're just going to be like, I guess, But no, I think Zoo's role is going to be the fascinating watch, because he's probably the guy who could take the biggest hit production-wise in terms of, like, raw numbers. But his impact will still, like, you'll still feel the same of, like, wow, this guy's, like, he's so invaluable. Because every time he sat last year, they got hammered. It was drastic how much they needed him on the floor in every situation.
Last year was cool because I think it finally shed a national or more of a national spotlight on how valuable he is, like, defensively. He's been, by value, by metric, like, one of the best rim protectors for a while now. And then people are starting to think, like, looking at his position or the way he's even able to move his feet, like, he's just so much better on that end than I think a lot of people, including myself, probably realized, like, until the past few years. And so it was cool to see him get not just the recognition for, whoa, look, he's doing all this stuff, or look at how his usage is skyrocketing on offense. You did mention insulating him, though, a bit, which is, like, important because this wasn't a guy who was playing as many minutes as he was last year. I feel like those just upticked precipitously, but by necessity, of course.
Yeah, they were worried. I know for a fact they were worried about burning him out. Like, they've always been worried about. He's a big body. Like, and look, not everyone is Nikola Jokic's, like, Energizer bunny of he can just roll out of bed and play 40 minutes a night of, like, 100 possessions handling the ball
like
a game.
He went through a war. His
arms
were always just, yeah.
I know this is a quick sidebar, but, like, Nikola Jokic might be the greatest athlete I've ever seen, and that sounds crazy because you don't think of him as, like, the super athlete, but his motor, when you consider what they're asking him to do on a night-to-night basis and the minutes he plays, is crazy.
Yeah.
And, like, no other player does that, really. But with Zoo, it's they were worried about wearing him out, which is why you saw the Brook Lopez signing. They knew they needed another backup. They knew they needed a backup center, not another. They needed a backup center. So they go and get Brook, but they get John, who can play the 5. They have Nico, who can play the 5. They have all these types of guys who they can fill in for spot minutes. So their thing is to protect him because I think they've realized, as weird as it sounds, on a team with Kawhi Leonard and James Harden, Ivica Zubac might be the franchise at this point.
That's such a bizarre thing to say, and I really don't have any pushback against it.
It is strange. Like, it's a strange thing to say, but also, I think it's true.
Praise be Mike Muscala. I mean, hey, single-handedly shifted the Clippers franchise.
That's the first Clippers statue that goes up, by the way.
So there's no argument from a talent in a vacuum perspective going from Norman Powell to Bradley Beal. Even if you didn't like Bradley Beal in Phoenix, he still shot the hell out of the ball. It is, in theory, a talent upgrade, I think, because of a lot of what he could do on the ball. We saw Norm do some more of that stuff, but he did fade. And also Bradley Beal is just like, that's someone whose role can scale to the playoffs. Why should we believe, though, that the fit in Los Angeles is going to go so much better than it did in Phoenix? And I say that with the caveat of, I think Bradley Beal tried really hard to adapt in year one. I think the shooting numbers were still fine through the time that he was there. But it was just, by the end of it, like, he was just very clearly disenchanted with his role. Is this more of an eyes wide open situation? Is it that the Clippers are built to give him more of the role that he is supposed to play? I think it's more so the latter. I guess I just don't trust that Bradley Beal is as adaptable as a lot of people believe that he is after watching what happened in Phoenix.
What I can tell you is they believe his Phoenix stint was an anomaly.
Yeah.
They just think that it was just not doomed from the start, but just something was off from the get-go. And I don't think I think they're going in with like a cautious optimism, so to speak, of he just had 2 coaches in 2 years in Phoenix. And they changed systems, they changed defenses, they did all this stuff. And, I think they're cautiously optimistic that the Bradley Beal from Washington is the real one, not the one from Phoenix. Although the one in Phoenix, as you mentioned, offensively, when I went through and did a deep dive on Bradley Beal for an article that I wrote a couple months ago, where I looked at data and film and all this stuff, he had a great offensive year. Mm-hmm. Like, if you just, like, as you said, if you just go through his offensive numbers, Bradley Beal had a fantastic offensive year. The problem was Bradley Beal's defense was horrendous. The entire Phoenix defense was horrendous, and the vibes were just horrific. And they think their chemistry in the locker room, mixed with their defensive infrastructure from last year, and the need for a shooting guard, like an actual shooting guard, is going to give Brad, I guess, a little bit of a boost to get back to where he was in Washington. And there was a very funny thing that happened with when Lawrence Frank had his Zoom interview with us. I think it was like the week after? It was a couple days after like the Bradley Beal signing became official. And I wrote this really long form piece on Bradley Beal. And in the thing, Lawrence Frank just makes mention of, we've seen all the data that everyone has about his defense. We've seen all the same video. We know the concerns, but we're optimistic that basically he'll get back to the level that he was before Phoenix. And it just made me think like, oh, they've read the bad stuff. They know the negative downside of what this could be. But also, at the end of the day, Bradley Beal for $5 million, where are you finding that? Like, that's too big. That's too good of a swing to not take. It's like it's like someone throwing you a center cut fastball on a 3-1 count, and you're just like, you got to swing. Like,
is there like anything that you're either concerned about or that you think he's really going to need to change or like just adjust to be like properly integrated into a lineup that's going to have James Harden? He's going to spend time with Kawhi. We'll probably see some of him with CP3. They're going to want to use Zoo in certain ways.
He can't dawdle on the ball. You can't be dribbling the air out of the ball for 15 seconds on a shot clock every 8, 9, 10 possessions. You can't do that. Like, that's number one, and 1B would actually just be defense. Like, he has to try. He's going to be their main point of attack defender in the starting lineup. That's literally what's going to happen. They already said it. That's their main defender on ball handlers. They're going to, I think, which, by the way, I know people are going to just like scoff at that and be like, well, that's crazy. He's not a good defender. I agree. But their thinking, at least to me, is How do you keep Bradley Beal engaged? You make him engaged.
I guess it's not a bad bet. The thing that I struggle over with the starting five is because if we expect Collins to start, Harden is a 4 on defense, and so you want Bradley Beal guarding the point of attack. That does kind of complicate life for John Collins, or it ends up making life on Zubac a lot harder. And I think that's where it's just, again, I'm not saying it won't work. This team deserves the benefit of the doubt after last year, and I understand why they will start who we expect them to start, but I just still am sort of... in the regular season, I just feel like, is there going to be a potential for a slow start, or are they just going to run into some issues with that starting five maybe on the defensive end? There's no really arguing with the offensive upside of it, though, especially in a playoff setting.
Dan, can I introduce you to the school of Jeff Van Gundy? This is going to be his greatest challenge is getting that group. But in all seriousness, James is a 4, so like that's why like the Law Murray of The Athletic, who covers the Clippers, like we always talk about all the time, like James wasn't guarding point guards. James was the low man. James was literally the power forward. That's why he got 800 blocks/steals last year, just swiping down guys as they went to the rim. So it's going to be Brad on the ball handler, the number 1 option. You get Kawhi, who's on the number 2 and is able to play help side. And he and John are probably switchable to where if Kawhi needs to play more help side, you could have John guard more on the ball. Doesn't mean John's going to be a great level of doing it, but it's like you got to figure things out. And also, as we've seen, I don't know if this is a negative against them, but I say this for basically every team, like lineups change even early in games just because like the bench will come in like 6 minutes in and you start getting these rotations. So like maybe it's like 12 minutes a night, 18 minutes a night the starters together, but also how many games are all these guys going to be available for at the same time? You might get 40 a year, and then everything else you just patchwork as you go. So it's hard to say. I mean, yes, they're old, but also like there's a lot of injury questions with guys. James's workload was big last year. How does that affect him this year? Bradley Beal, I don't think he's played 60 games in a very long time. John Collins misses time. Granted, last year missing time on the Utah Jazz was actually a vacation for him, so that's good. Kawhi Leonard missed the first half of the year, but obviously this is the first offseason he's been healthy in a long time. And I remember talking to him after Game 7 when they lost in Denver. I explicitly asked him, you came into the year when you first started, in January, that your goal was to get to the offseason healthy. How do you feel? And he said, result aside, they accomplished their goal. He feels great, and he's ready. And this offseason, to be perfectly blunt with you, this is the most I've ever seen Kawhi Leonard publicized in the offseason ever. This man is out on, like, world trips doing basketball camps. I've never seen this before. It's like a new guy. What the hell happened? He gets into one offseason healthy, and he just becomes Jacques Cousteau traveling the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge, too. And it's also, you mentioned this earlier, they're now able, and it felt like they went his usage wasn't severely impacted, but they felt like they went about this last year of trying to streamline his offensive role at points, and now they're really built to do that, because this is someone who, you want to put the ball in his hands, you want him to get to his spots, but just like the burden that should be on him from a night-to-night basis when he's available, when's the last time it was this low? Like when the Spurs won the title with him? I'm honestly trying to think. That's hyperbole, but it just
I think you're right. I think you're right. Yeah, that Spurs title might be the last time that it was this low, because possibly even the year after, where they lost to the Clippers in the first round. That might be the last time it was really like this level, because they still had Duncan, and even though Duncan wasn't Tim Duncan at that time, it was still like the ball went to him, the ball went to Tony, the ball went to Manu, or Manu wasn't there, but it went to like Danny Green and all these guys. So like, but yeah, you're talking about a decade ago.
Yeah, that's forever ago, and it's probably, I mean, it's just important because he's getting older and given his injury history, but in a lot of his core lineups, even if he's not the primary point of attack guy, it does feel like his lift on defense is still going to be freaking heavy as hell if you're going to play with James Harden, Bradley Beal, and John Collins a bunch at once. And so making sure he doesn't have to shoulder too much responsibility, at least, creating for himself, whatever, but give the guy extra space. to operate, so he's not working as hard to get his shots. And then also, at this point, it's like I don't really want his playmaking burden to have to be as heavy either.
I kind of feel like that was the trade-off is we'll get you these offensive guys around you, but you need to go back to being yourself defensively. It's like you need to take the top stuff, and then you have all these pieces around you on offense that kind of mitigate your burden there, but we need you on defense. And he's not the defender he used to be, but man, when he turns it on defensively, it's incredible. I mean, as you know, like you've been in the arena for like a lot of great performances. Like when someone gets it going on offense, you're like, oh my god, like no one's like I saw LeBron go for 50 against the Clippers, and he drilled like a career high in threes. And I just remember just sitting there going, there's nothing you could do could stop that guy. But I've seen Kawhi on defense when he turns it on, and it reminds me of I'm a Steelers fan, and I might be dating myself here. Now I wasn't alive in the 70s. But I saw a lot of footage of Steelers 1970s steel curtain defense because my dad was a Steelers fan, and that's how I became one. It reminds me a lot of like Mel Blount on the perimeter, like guarding receivers, where, yeah, he's physical and he gets away with a lot of stuff because it's Mel Blount, it's Kawhi. Like you're going to let them get a little bit handsier. But, man, they can just totally shut down an entire like side of the full floor or the field, and that's what it reminds me of, like this dominant defensive guy that, no, he can't turn it on 35 minutes a night for 82 games. But when you can get one night every like week or so where you're just like, Jesus Christ, like how does anyone score against this guy?
It's those vintage Kawhi like highlight. Like remember, they do that with LeBron all the time. It's like vintage LeBron. Anytime he does something like a chase down block or something, it's like we'll get more of those social media posts this year. It does feel like
it's like when Kawhi rips a guy mid dribble, and you're just like, I remember there was a time this year someone dribbled against him, and he just like quite literally in the crossover stuck his hand out, and the ball stuck to his hand, and he went the other way. And I just remember going, what the hell just happened? Like, you just don't see that.
No, you don't. I mean, the size of his hands for one, but just like the way he uses them, like being just so quick and on point with everything. Man, we all know he's like one of the bigger what ifs, even though he's accomplished so much. But there's a lot just talked about like how many titles would he win, or like would he have been league MVP at any point. I'm just like, he's gonna go down as one of the like greatest defenders ever anyway. But what if he just never deals with this knee stuff mostly? Like, what do we just remember him as defensively? Because it doesn't even seem like he has that same like that lore, that mystique is like a Draymond Green. The way we talk about Draymond Green as a generational defender, and it feels like Kawhi would not be on that level. He would be higher than that.
Yeah, and it seems like some of that's eroded just because of the injuries.
Yeah,
and then like I said, you'll get a blip every now and then where you're like, oh, it's still there. It just needs to be coaxed out, and maybe that's what they're doing. Is they're trying to limit the burden offensively to coax it out of him to where he doesn't have to do as much on one end, so you just need him to pick it up on the other to protect the other guys. And I think he could do that. I think that, he's still going to average like 22 points a game, but you might get 22 points on great efficiency where he's not shooting as much, and defensively he's not where he used to be, but he's pretty close.
If he plays in 65 games...
He's not playing 65. He's not playing 65.
How many back-to-backs do they have? I know Joel Embiid was basically eliminated from awards contentions.
Clippers have 15, I think, so that would be...
all right, curtains, done.
It'd be 67, but like he's still probably going to miss a game here and there. Now, granted, he did play one of the last back-to-backs last year, but also that was... Which, by the way, created one of the funniest moments of the year in the locker room, because... Ty got asked after that game. I forget who they played. I want to say... I don't remember who they played, but the next night they played Houston. And Houston wasn't playing anybody at that time because they had the 2 seed wrapped up. And Ty gets asked, is Kawhi playing tomorrow? And Ty just goes, he goes, I don't know. We'll have to talk to medical, but that's a decision for tomorrow. And so we get in the locker room, and Kawhi comes out, and he walks to his locker. And Kawhi, last year, just want to say this, absolutely incredible media-wise. One of the best years I've ever had with Kawhi. He was always available to talk. If he asked you if you needed him and you said yes, he would talk. It was great. Fantastic stuff. So we walked up to him, and it was me and two others, and we're like, hey, are you going to play tomorrow? Or no, we didn't even say anything. He walks from the shower to go sit down, and he goes, I'm not talking tonight. I'll get you guys tomorrow. And the three of us just go, what does that mean? Like, one of the colleagues walked up and goes, are you playing tomorrow? And he goes, that's the plan, but I got to meet with medical in the morning, but that's the plan. And that's how we found out he was going to play his first back-to-back of the year. So that was the only time all year Kawhi turned us down for media, but simply because he told us he would get us the next night. So I say all that to say maybe he plays in back-to-backs this year, maybe not. They changed up his rehab this year. His rehab this past season was spearheaded by Maggie Bryant, who's their director of like health and wellness. Basically, they took a new approach, and I remember at media day this past year, last year, Kawhi talked about how they finally got a handle on the things that were bothering him. So, there's a potential that maybe he does play back-to-backs, maybe he has a healthy year, but a healthy year for Kawhi, I'd probably pin it like 64 games. I don't think he'll get to 65.
Well, if he did, would he be all defense?
He could be. I think he's one of those guys who has the gravitas where if they make the cut in terms of games, he'll probably get in. Because if their team defense is good enough too.
This is no natural segue here. Chris Paul's prerogative was to go to the Clippers, so I don't have a problem with him scaling down or that he's going to have disillusions about his role. But what is his role on this team? Is it going to be more situational, or do you think that he's going to be penciled in for like a certain amount of minutes regardless?
Do you want me to tell you what they told us?
Yeah.
The go-to line was there's going to be some nights where he plays a lot, and there's going to be some nights where he doesn't play. That was the thing. But if you're asking me what I think his role is,
Chris Paul on some nights is a huge adjustment for Chris. He just played in all 82 games last year. That's insane.
Yeah, I think he's the backup point guard. He's just the backup point guard. And also now, the Bogdanovic injury for however long he's out for, that creates another spot that they kind of have to fill minutes for. So I just think Kris is going to play most of the games if he's available. Unless they get into a situation where it's like end of the season, they're competing for a certain seed or a playoff spot, and it's like we need to trim the rotation to like 8 guys just to get in, and maybe he doesn't play then. But I'm pretty sure he's going to play not quite a bit, but he's going to play most of the games. Like, I don't want to. It sounds weird to say it's Chris Paul. You're just not going to not play Chris Paul, right?
I can't imagine the idea of him load managing, just to like throw that out there, but like I just can't. It's just so un-Chris Paul-esque. Like I can't imagine that going over well with him. But I guess he's in a phase of his. Like I said, he's the one who really wanted to go to the Clippers as well. Yeah. So, or at least in Los Angeles, be closer to his family. So I doubt he has any illusions as to what his role would be. But that's like, it's a cliche, but that's a gamer. Like that's someone who just wants to play all the time. He
wouldn't even talk retirement at his press conference that he did. He just he wouldn't entertain it. He didn't want to talk about it. But he gave great answers. He was great. And also, he loves being back in LA, and I'm sure he's already sick of seeing me. I've seen him at 3 different places in like the span of like 10 days. I saw him when he did his press conference. I saw him at a Sparks game in an elevator. I was in the elevator and he walked in and we said hi to each other. And then I saw him at the Angel City match that I covered like 3 days later. He was there for his daughter's birthday. And I'm just like, I'm seeing this guy's quintessential LA. Of course Chris Paul's back here. It's great.
I do find it funny that they keep pairing James Harden with guards that he played with in Houston. So I don't know. I guess John Wall already did his Clippers tenure, so we don't have to worry about that. That one's you can't be checked off the box. But how do you see Harden needing to? Some of it will be welcomed because of the role that he needed to assume last year. Like, how does Harden need to adjust to having all these like different offensive weapons on the team now?
Did John Wall have a Clippers tenure? Did he? Did he really?
It counts, like, sort of, right?
He was there. Like, nothing against John Wall. He was a nice guy. But, yeah, that didn't go well for the Clippers. As far as the guards that James knows, like, it's almost like a devil you know versus the one you don't. And James and Kris, I think, are so competitive, they'll figure it out. I know they had whatever happened in Houston, but everything since then has seemed amicable for whenever it gets brought up. There's no drama there. But for James, it's just, I feel like for years they've tried to get James to tone down his workload. Not the Clippers, but just everywhere. It's like, oh, you go to Brooklyn, you're going to handle the ball, but you're not going to have to score as much. That's why we have Kyrie and KD. Then it's like, well, that goes belly up. And then so he goes to Philly. Well, now you're with Joel Embiid, MVP candidate. You're not going to have to do as much scoring. You just have to facilitate the ball. That goes belly up. And so it's like, here you are with the Clippers. It's like, well, you got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. You don't have to do as much, and that goes belly up. And it's like, what the hell are we doing? So, in theory, James Harden doesn't have to do as much this year. In reality, he's probably going to do just as much as he did last year because that's James Harden. And I think his fit with everyone, I will say this, they've gotten guys around him who I think fit pretty well for him. Where I'm not going to say they went the Houston route of like, here's 5 out, or not 5 out, but like 4 out spacing and then you're rolling big. But they're pretty close. Like, this is the type of offensive ecosystem James has thrived in for a decade. So I think it'll be fine for him. Now, will his usage decrease? It has to. You'll kill the guy. He's like 36 now. Like, no one has worked this hard this long at this usage rate consistently. And
not playing the amount of minutes he does for sure.
Yeah, I don't think people... I'm glad you mentioned that. I don't think people realize how much he plays. If he's even 50% healthy, he's playing. And he's playing like 38, 40 minutes a night. And it's like, no wonder he burns out. Like, he's a gamer. Like, you talk about Chris Paul being a gamer. That's probably why they didn't get along towards the end of the Houston tenure. They're too much alike. You know? I mean, it just is what it is. So I think for James, they need to tone down his workload a little bit, or at least the stress of the workload. I think like if his usage rate is the same, it's not the end of the world, but it's like the stress of that usage rate where if he's having to create, you know, as the shot clock dwindles down time and time again, that's draining. But if he's able to just kind of get easier shots and create more one-on-one style settings for other players, it won't be as stressful for him. Whereas when, like this past year, he was facing a loaded box like quite often, and that's a killer.
What's interesting about him is that lightened workload for him means something different, where it's like more space for him to operate on the ball to make that aspect of his job easier, because you don't, as much as we've seen like some of the off-ball stuff, like the percentages in terms of frequency, they will fluctuate. I still just never view him as like someone who's going to be this like incredible weapon away from the ball. And so lightening his workload does feel more about like, well, giving him more space to operate, to make his shots easier and to table set for everyone else, which is, it's a form of diminishing your workload, but at the same time, it's also not.
Yeah, like his workspace, it's like his workload is the same, but his workspace is slightly skewed, essentially. Right. Like, you know, like you just took things away that just gave him a little bit more room. So, yeah, I mean, their whole thing is like, let's not kill the old guys. Like, seriously. And what's a way to keep James a little bit fresher? When he drives to the rim, maybe there won't be 3 people every time. It's one way. I'm very interested because we can sit here and talk about the amount of talent on this team, and like, let's be realistic. There's a lot of talent on this team. Like, compared to last year, it's pretty crazy the talent uptick they've had in just 12 months. But there are a lot of questions, and I think people will be kidding themselves if they don't think there are.
When you look at, we've talked a little bit about the front court rotation around Zoo, but what does it kind of say about what they're going to default to on the front line now that you have the 3 big approach of Lopez, Zubac, and John Collins? Is there going to be, I know defensively you don't want to see him here too much, but like Kawhi at the 4 is kind of like a cheat code on offense. So like, is that still going to be a staple, or we just need to get, like, they only have 3 bigs, but it's how many, I guess, 1 big setups are we going to see from the Clippers this season?
I think you'll see quite a bit because that's Ty loves spaced out floors offensively, and they love Kawhi at the 4 offensively. You mentioned it. I've taken flack for this over the last couple of years. Their best basketball is with Kawhi at the 4. It just is. And at least on offense. On defense, there are some issues, but I don't think the issue is Kawhi related. But they're going to get 1 big looks because they have to. Because you have to, in a lineup with like Brook Lopez, you're going to need him to have the space to both roll and pop. Mm-hmm. And then with Zoo, you're going to have to get him rolling to the rim or in the short roll with other people and all this stuff. So in the sense of like trying to mesh everyone, they're going to have to toy around with one big lineups. And I'm kind of interested to see the ones that they pull out because Lopez, more than any other big that they've had in recent history, is the most malleable guy as like a center. So he can play with anybody. And I'm generally interested to see how they make that work.
When you look at the offense overall, last year it did tick up. Kawhi playing more basketball helped. Bogdanovic was actually pretty good for them. I don't think that people realize that as much. How much does his injury, if he's going to miss extensive time, if it actually is a hamstring tear, does that have any, like, they have a ton of offensive talent on this team, but when you're looking at, there's no Norman Powell, a guy that could just work almost exclusively off ball or fire these quick trigger threes, they don't necessarily have that guy right now. And so does this impact them in any way if they don't have him available?
I think it does. I think because, as you mentioned, like the three-point aspect where he's able just to get the ball and go. Like, he's a quick decision maker. He's a second-side ball handler. He's able to operate in some pick-and-roll settings. We've seen this with Serbia time and time again. It's just – it's not a good injury to have for a guy who has dealt with lower body injuries. Yeah, especially lower body injuries. Yeah. And, you know, that could mess with you. So, and also – I don't think people realize, like, he's played a lot of basketball, like, because you have to go back to the international stuff for him, to where he didn't come over till he was like 27, I think. So he'd played a lot of basketball even before the NBA. So, which, by the way, was my favorite thing for people to figure out, is that Bogdan Bogdanovic was not like some 28-year-old player, because he didn't come over till he was like. I think people thought because he wasn't in the NBA that long, and then they saw his age and they're like, oh, he's been around for a while. But yeah, I mean, you look at last year for Bogey, and he ended up shooting 43% from three with the Clippers, but it was like 36% overall. I remember the press conference when they got him. I asked Lawrence Frank, because Bogey with Atlanta last year had underperformed his shot quality the second most in the NBA. So like that's why it was a fascinating trade, is because they kind of bought into small sample size. He shot poorly. Maybe there's other things at play. And we can kind of, like, when he figures it out, we are the beneficiary. And that's what ended up happening. Not having him is a big deal, because now you're talking about they got rid of Norman Powell. They don't have Amir Coffey's three-point shooting. And they don't have Bogey, at least for probably the beginning of the season, if not more. We don't know yet. That's three big-time three-point shooters. And now that falls onto, yes, you got Bradley Beal, and yes, Bradley was a great spot-up shooter, but he didn't do a lot of it. And now you need to kind of offset the Bogey loss by having Brad do more. And it creates a weird thing, which I know Bogey's not going to play a lot next year. Like, he'll probably play, I would say, like 18 minutes a night probably. But those are still 18 minutes of a league, if not league average player who's good on offense that you could count on.
Well, actually, you mentioned this before, so I want to ask you about it, where they said John Collins is going to be their transition offense. And I know their transition frequency kind of did downtick towards the end of last year, but, like, is this team going to have that gear? Is it some of the second units that can drive a lot of the full floor stuff still, or is that element going to fade from that part? And by the way, like, a lot of the time when you're operating in transition, it says a lot about your lack of faith maybe in what you can do inside the half court. And they're not going to have any shortage of half court creators, but just from like a varying your cadence perspective, I'm kind of wondering if the Clippers are going to have the ability to shift those dials.
Their idea of transition offense, and this is what it is, hit ahead passes from James and Kris. That's quite literally what their thought is. It's not someone grabs the ball and go. It's get the ball to James, hit ahead to someone. Get the ball to Kris, he'll hit ahead to John, or he'll hit ahead to Derrick, or someone like that. Like, their transition offense is going to be kind of unconventional in some aspects. But yeah, like, it's not going to be a fun transition offense. It's not going to be one where you're like, oh, if we stop the Clippers on transition offense, like, we have a great chance. No, the Clippers' game plan is they're going to grind you out in a half-court setting. And that's it. Their transition is going to be
semi-transition. That's what we'll call it for them. They'll be
a
semi-transition.
Yeah, sure, there might be moments where Kawhi gets the ball on a rebound or whatever, and that's a transition layup or dunk or something. But most of the time, it's going to be ball finds James, gets hit ahead to John or Derrick, and it's a dunk. That's literally going to be their entire transition sequence, except for one aspect I will say. When I did my deep dive on Bradley Beal, one thing I came away very impressed with him with, Bradley Beal was an elite transition player last year, especially spotting up for threes. Brad runs the floor in a way that I think is conducive for the Clippers offensively in transition, where he will actually hard sprint to corners and will act as a trailer above the break. That, I think, is an area where we probably think of transition in the way of like, oh, so-and-so gets the ball, runs up the floor, dunk over and over, like that's, or rips someone and that. But the transition spacing with Brad is going to be a lot better, especially with like his penchant for aggressively running. Is he going to get the ball in transition as much? Maybe not, but he's still going to do a job where it frees up other people.
Yeah, I mean, I make the semi-transition joke before, but like anytime you can go against a tilted defense, it's going to help you. So even if it ends up being a half-court possession, if it was set up because Bradley Beal is running his ass off down the floor and it stretches out the defense or it causes a cross-match or something, that ends up being probably a pretty big boon for the offense. So I am just just because you look at Bradley Beal, even if he has the ball, James Harden, Chris Paul, Kawhi Leonard, like those are guys that want to grind you down for the most part. And I think that they have the talent to do that. I'm just curious if there's going to, I think part of what made the Clippers so enjoyable for me last year, aside from just being so wrong about them, is there was this unpredictability to the way they could play at some points. Then there also wasn't, because you're featuring James Harden so heavily.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see not so much with their core starting five or whatever. I'm just curious to see what some of the secondary lineups might look like offensively for them.
Yeah, it's gonna be fascinating. Like last year, I think going in, even though the talent level wasn't to this degree as it is this year, I think we kind of have an idea of how they were going to play. It was going to be, these were the three things they needed to do. They needed to play defense, they needed to play hard, and they needed to try to score as easy as they could when they weren't in the half court. And this year, it's almost like offense in the half court shouldn't be a problem, but now they need to uptick in other areas. And I'm fascinated by them. I think they're one of the more interesting teams in the league just from that point of view. There's obviously all the teams are interesting in their own right. It's just from a Clipper-centric point of view, it's we kind of think we know what the Clippers are going to be, but they could zig where others zag. I don't know.
Well, and also it's just a team last year that, by and large, was smaller just compared to a lot of other teams, and they're just first in defensive rebounding rate, and then they got bigger. It's just, that's insane.
It's funny. It is funny to think they were first in defensive rebounding rate and then couldn't rebound in the postseason. Which they talked about too. They actually did talk about it. They were very much
into John Collins. I know the whole you're getting Bradley Beal, ship out Norman Powell, he's extension eligible, going to be a free agent, that whole thing, but that also had to be part of the reason to okay, John Collins is someone who can rebound.
Well, yeah, and it pushes Kawhi back to the three.
Yeah.
And that was the thing, is their whole mindset is when Kawhi Leonard is on the floor, we're a very good basketball team, and they're not wrong. They rebound better, they defend better, they score better. Everything about them is better. But I do think they thought they needed John to move Kawhi to the three to get more size for better rebounding. Not even just for John himself, but for Kawhi to rebound against smaller threes.
Yeah, and I mean, that makes sense. And they're also kind of what they did, just it feels like they're not as reliant on any one player. Where I think anyone could miss time, and you feel maybe Zubac is the one that you would still feel finicky about. But even then,
but you got
Brook Lopez can slide in and give you a base defensive guy. So
yeah, it's weird, right? That's think of how weird that is, because I don't think it's been like that for the Clippers in my time covering them. Is when Blake Griffin went down, it wasn't okay, this guy can step. It's oh shit, Blake Griffin's down. Oh, Chris Paul's down. Well, now we're kind of screwed. I will say if James goes down, that's the one guy where if you lose James, it could get a little bit dicey. But I mean, even losing Kawhi is not the end of the world. We saw that last year.
They just did it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's If there is a pressure point, I will say this. If there is a pressure point, and I cannot believe this sentence is about to come out of my mouth, what happens if Bradley Beal misses 40 games? Because your backup's Bogdanovic, which even if he's healthy, yes, he's a replacement level shooting guard, starting caliber type guy, but like there's a trickle down effect at the guard spot after that to where do you start Kris and James together? Do you like I know it sounds crazy, but like you might just have to. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is it?
Because obviously Kris Dunn. Kris Dunn is like the guy they'd probably start.
I was going to ask, like, do you just go to Kris Dunn in that instance then?
You probably do, but like it kind of still, if you're trying to go more offense to like keep the spacing around your main guys, I don't know.
Who do you think? That's what I've also given a lot of thought about. Is who do you think? And this, this kind of circles back to what you were saying about in the beginning about what their offense can look like in the playoffs, like based on last year's team. Who gets impacted more by the new look of this roster in terms of their role? Derrick Jones Jr. or Kris Dunn?
Oh, that's a good question.
My gut reaction was Kris Dunn, just because it feels like they have so much guard depth, but he also does something that literally none of their other guards do.
Yeah. And he's so good defensively too.
Yeah, it's insane.
I can tell you they were internally pissed that he was not eligible for all defense. Some of it was their own doing because no one still understands the rules about 65 games, like what is and what is not a game. That it's still a thing. Which, quick sidebar, I talked to people at the team who I had posted that I think they need to change the requirement for awards from 65 games of like 20 plus minutes to just like a straight, like you play 1,300 minutes and you're eligible for whatever award that you're eligible for. I had someone with the team tell me that is something they would like to see changed because not even just for like their guys, but they think a lot of players around the league are kind of getting screwed by this. And yeah, but
there's going to be a year, I don't know that we've seen it yet, but like where some of the awards ballots are going to just look insanely bad in retrospective because of the way it's set up. And I still don't, I know people say the players didn't get hammered in the CBA, but I'm just still wondering why they didn't push back harder against a lot of this stuff.
The 65 game thing didn't make sense. Like the raw minutes should have been what it is. Cause like hypothetically, if a player plays 60 games of like 32 minutes a night, is that guy not more valuable to a team than...
Like, I want to see players play. Like, I understand people's thing. Like, we want to have these players available in all these games. But, like, what matters more, playing in 75 games at 17 minutes a clip or playing in 60 games at 34 minutes a clip? Like, that's a pretty clear, like, especially when it comes to, because it gets all sorts of just wonky when you get to the all-defense ballot specifically. Like, a lot of the other awards, and even most improved player, maybe sixth man of the year, like, a lot of that stuff is... It's not as cut and dry. Like, some of the awards are cut and dry. The all-defense stuff and, like, sixth man of the year, most improved player are not. And so that's why I'm not... One of them, do you need the... What's the one that you don't need?
Rookie doesn't need it, and I think there's another one. I don't remember.
Sixth man of the year at least doesn't have the... Maybe it's not the 65 one? Because most improved player definitely has it. I think it might be the sixth. Maybe it doesn't have, like, that minutes threshold where it's like you needed to clear a certain amount of minutes.
Maybe.
In a number of performances. See?
Yeah, I'm trying.
How long have we covered the league?
Yeah,
we fancy ourselves sickos, and here we are. We're still not fully grasping it.
I mean, you look back at you mentioned all defensive team. Kris Dunn should have made all defense, but he just wasn't eligible. You know who else wasn't eligible? Alex Caruso. Not eligible. Like, you had all these guys.
Players would have made it. Like, if those awards weren't, eligibility wasn't in place.
Luguentz Dort wouldn't even have made first team. Like, I think he made first team. He wouldn't have made first team. Like, even, like, there was like 3 guys on his team that were better defenders. And it's just, but that's the nature of the awards is these guys get slipped through the crack because of this. And, like, Kris Dunn was one of them. But to answer your original question, the guy's role who might change the most, it might be Derrick, just because there's more forwards on the roster now. Okay. But also, like, Derrick is such a good defender too, and he gives him something. I mean, John kind of provides it with like his above the rim cutting and athleticism and all this stuff. But Derrick's such a different athlete that
a stick of dynamite. Yeah.
Yeah, he and James had incredible chemistry, and also the one thing I want to point about Derrick, one of the very best screen navigators I've ever seen. Kris Dunn's great at it. I think Derrick Jones might actually be better, which is a disgusting thought, really.
He's all when you like think back, even to how Dallas used him before he came over to the Clippers specifically. Like he's always been really good at like handling a lot of the smaller assignments too, which in part has to be because of his screen navigation.
And so I think his size is a hindrance against like bigger players, but yet I think that's the reason he's so good at screen navigation, because he's not a bulky guy. He's like this wiry, like, dude who slithers around screens by just getting his shoulder through the gap and then just like melting through. And if you go back and watch some footage from last year, it's some of the most bewildering stuff you'll see about how like he'll get screened and he's just the next frame. It's like Derrick Jones back in front of this guy, and you're like, what the hell even happened?
Kind of hoping Mikal Bridges might have worked out with him a little bit this summer.
I mean, look, that's a whole nother thing for Mikal, you know? Like, I will say, Mikal Bridges, he really is an Iron Man. I will give him that. Mikal Bridges, that dude, every game.
But are you the type of person, I'm an alarmist, and I've said this now a bunch of times, where it might be like a character flaw, but like because Mikal Bridges has just played all these games, I just assume that he's due for like some type of like catastrophe, where I don't look at it as that being Iron Man is cool and it's an accomplishment for him, but I'm waiting for the first shoe to drop. Now I'm like a person who's always waiting for the other shoe to drop, and if one hasn't dropped, I'm like, well, it's gonna come sometime, and that's how I view this. And that's probably a little sick, but that's how I feel about it.
It's because we're cynical by nature, right? Like you're just like, oh, it has to happen. But I don't know, maybe he's just AC Green, where he just plays 20 years at a pretty good level of minutes, and you're just like, oh, he just like Andre Miller made an entire career playing a bunch of minutes without ever getting hurt. Now, granted, Andre Miller never jumped off the floor once in his life, but you know, it helps to not get injured. But I don't know, maybe Mikal Bridges is just an anomaly. They're probably going to study him 30 years from now and find out that he had some like weird mixture of like muscle tissue that like connected. And it was like the old Nolan Ryan thing. Remember that thing with like Nolan Ryan? Wasn't it like his elbow was like different or something? Or was that Justin Verlander? Someone's elbow. It was like Justin Verlander or Nolan Ryan or something. Like their elbow had like this weird like ligament that was it wasn't in like the natural formation, so it helped with like elbow trauma or something. It was very strange. I think it might have been Justin Verlander, and then he ended up tearing it, and now he's 45 and still pitching at a high level because nothing makes sense anymore.
The less proven people on this roster that probably aren't going to have a ton of roles. Do you have any impressions of, like, let's start with Niederhauser, the rookie that's coming in. Any early impressions of him after Summer League?
Very raw, but I see it. Now, granted, I do think my personal belief, there were players on the board that they probably should have picked over him, but I understand why they picked him. He was the best athletic center in the combine history that they had. Like, it's kind of wild when you think about the centers who've gone through it. But like when you adjust for like size and frame and all the stuff, he was the most athletic one who tested out. And you watch him play and you see how raw he is, but you see the upside. He didn't start playing basketball, I want to say, till he was like 15. And he has a very fascinating background where he took judo as a kid, and he used to take a train from Switzerland, like wherever he lived in Switzerland, I believe it was, to like basketball camps, and that's how he started playing basketball. He suffered a really traumatic knee injury when I believe he was like 17 or 15. I think at about 15 he suffered a traumatic knee injury. Maybe it was 17. It was one of those ages. It doesn't really matter. Suffered a traumatic knee injury, and he was actually bedridden for like 8 months. And that's when he actually underwent his height. Like he got a growth spurt of like 8 inches over like 2 years. And so he dealt with this. He was originally a guard. And so when you watch him, there was plays in Summer League, he would get the ball like off the board or a steal or a block or whatever, and he would push in transition. He'd go behind his back. Now the finishing left a little bit to be desired, but also he's just moving very fast at his size. And, you know, I tend to not evaluate people in Summer League that seriously. But his handle was a lot better than I think people thought for a center. So that guard aspect came, but he's he's really good, I think, in terms of potential. Not a really good player right now, but they think he can grow down the line. And all I'll say is, if they got a rotation level center with the 30th pick, I don't think people should gripe about that. I think that's where I'm at.
Two things stuck out to me when he was doing summer league was I think that he could end up being like a really big like defensive playmaker. Like the aggression can wax and wane right now, but I think that he's going to be super disruptive if he ever reaches his final form. The other thing that stood out is I guess it speaks to I didn't know the point guard background about him, but it was the game against the Lakers where he like picks that pass and then uses 2 dribbles to go more than 3/4 of the court and finish. So I was just like, oh God. And then my final thing was they've literally surrounded him with, well, maybe not literally, but virtually surrounded with every type of big man that he can kind of call. Like, just think about how different John Collins and Zubac and Brook Lopez just are in the grand scheme of things. And I'm like, we romanticize everything after summer league, where it's like we go off vibes, like fuck efficiency, who cares? Yeah. I love it, but he's in a pretty good situation. Like to just be around these guys, if he's even just practicing with them, like I wouldn't underestimate that. And so I'm, again, all the caveats apply here, but I'm intrigued by him, and he doesn't look the way he moves, kind of at both ends of the floor, but even more so defensively. And he's certainly not someone I would think to travel the full length of the floor. He doesn't move the way that he looks.
Yeah, he doesn't move like 7'1", 245 or whatever he is. It's remarkable, really. Like and I do wonder how much of that is like maybe I'm reading too much. I wonder how much of that could be a judo background, like where you studied something else to help you with movement. So I wonder if that like helped your body structure in terms of fluidity and muscle dexterity and all these things. He fascinates me because you see why he's so tantalizing. And it comes in like spurts. And I remember when they talked about him on draft night at the arena, it got scoffed at and like laughed at online. But Trent Redden says, the Clippers GM Trent Redden says, it was Lawrence Frank who said, if you squint in about 2 to 3 years from now, you can see him becoming a person who starts shooting threes. And like he never shot threes in college, but they liked the way his shot looks. But in summer league, he started taking them. He didn't make any, but you saw him take some and you're like, oh, his shot actually looks okay for his size. This goes back to your point. If there's anyone you want to learn from about how to go from a center who couldn't shoot to a center who just only shoots threes, Brook Lopez might be the best guy.
Any strong feelings about Kobe Brown, Cameron Christie, or even about what do they have, 14 guaranteed contracts right now, so about how they might use their final roster spot or if they use it at all?
Kobe Brown, for the half of Summer League that he played with the first half of the first game of Summer League. He looked great. He looked exactly how he should, and then he got shut down with an injury. It's a make-or-break year for Kobe. He's going to get minutes. Maybe not a lot of minutes, but they're going to have to play him at times. It's a make-or-break year for his career at this point. Cam has another year where I would say of like development, but they really like Cam. They like his shot form. They like his aggression at times. Cam's thing is going to come down to defense and whether or not he can make threes. But they like him as a development prospect. Outside of that, there's really not much. I mean, that sounds mean to say there's not really not much else to say, but that's just where they're at.
Are you ready to enter the cookie cutter / lightning round portion to close this podcast?
Oh, I just want to say one more thing. I'm sorry. You asked me about their final roster spot. They can't sign anyone. They're literally
right because they're so close to.
Yeah. They're hard capped at the first apron, and I don't want to. I guess I could pull it. I'm a nerd. You know that. I have a spreadsheet of.
No, I don't. I'm also staring at their salary cap situation right now too, to where it says that
aren't they like 10,000?
From the apron, or they're
1.2.
They can sign an undrafted. That's not even enough for like a zero.
No, it's not.
Rookie.
It's not. No, they're gonna wait for like the prorated buyout guy in like February.
They're not going to want to just because they're inside $7 million of it. This isn't going to be a team that's like, hey, how do we lop off like $7.5 million midseason to duck the tax entirely? That's not where they're at. I mean, I'm sure things go shitty, but if they're relatively who they think they are, that's not something they'll be looking to do. Correct?
I wouldn't rule it out. They want to reset the repeater tax. They were out of the tax last year. They made moves at the deadline to get out of the tax. I asked Lawrence Frank on the record if they're going to try to get out of the repeater tax, if being in the luxury tax is something they're going to do. They said if it makes sense, they'll be in the tax, but they want to reset the repeater tax. I have it on good authority from people I've talked to around the team. They don't want to be in the tax, if not this year, definitely not next year. What I will say, we've talked about him a little bit and his importance. Bogdanovic is the guy they would move. If they
like at this point, not that he's immovable, but coming off the injury and just like the numbers, not just let's send you here. And so I keep looking at Derrick Jones Jr. at money. It's just like that's someone who will slide into someone's exception pretty easily. I know, and maybe it would be Kris Dunn, but he doesn't make enough to fully get them out of there either. So I'm just, do they have the sweeteners to include with I'm not saying they need to include a first-round pick to get off like Bogdanovic. That's not what I'm saying. It just seems like that number is, it's not close to, but if he's coming off this hamstring injury, it makes it a lot more challenging to move him.
So Bogdanovic has I shouldn't say Bogdanovic. The Clippers have two things working in their favor with Bogdanovic. If they do trade him, they can do a 2-for-1 where they get 2 guys back to fill up some of the void. So like that would give them 15 guys on their roster at that point. The other part of it is he has a team option for 26-27. So if there is a team who looks at him and goes, if we trade for Bogdanovic, the upside is either we don't pick up the team option and we get that cap space, or at least we get that salary off the books, or we pick up the team option and we could flip him for someone else in like some type of deal. So I do think there is some like wiggle room to where they have like, they could convince a team to, I'm just going to say a team, I just want to say there's not been a discussion. This is not a thing. I'm just hypothetically saying Brooklyn still has cap space, so if you went to Brooklyn, we're not now, but like you get to like February deadline, and we're just like Bogdanovic for whatever works salary-wise to get the Clippers under the luxury tax, while getting Brooklyn to kind of eat the rest of that as cap space. Maybe there's a thing that you can work on. But yeah, it's going to be something. I think he's the one movable guy. But to your point about Derrick, he could possibly be movable. Kris could be movable. Now, granted, as you said, Kris won't get them under the luxury tax, but I don't know. I think they have machinations, but also they might just see it through on the luxury tax and then go into next offseason like, hey, guys, y'all ready to take some pay cuts to get under the luxury tax? Because we could add someone if you do. That might be the thing.
You let John Collins walk, and it just makes it a lot more palatable.
Yeah. Or sign John Collins to a deal that doesn't actually hamstring you, and you find ways to add talent without getting to, because they're not cap space, so find a way to add talent without getting the luxury tax, and then you just keep going once more into the breach until you get to 27.
Now are you ready to enter the lightning round close?
Yes. Sorry about that.
No, I'm all for tangents. I just don't want to keep you here. I'm already keeping you here too long. So we've talked about some of it, but when you look at the roster, what do you view as its single biggest weakness right now?
That's a great question. I mean, it would be durability,
right?
right?
Say youth, but what'd you say? Durability, youth. Yeah.
Durability, probably. Yeah. I am a little bit skeptical of their shooting, and I know that sounds weird because they added Bradley Beal. You obviously still have James Harden. You have Kawhi. Yeah, John Collins is a good three-point shooter, but I got to see it. I think for me is the thing is because for me shooting isn't just do they shoot well from three. They're going to take a lot of mid-range shots. They added Bradley Beal shoots in the mid-range. Yeah, they added Brad. They added Chris Paul. They love mid-range shots. So I'm kind of worried that like they're going to shoot well as a team, but are they the right shots?
What gives me some hope is, again, I think Bradley Beal can do it. And then Chris Paul kind of did it with San Antonio last year. Like his three-point volume was up there with the Spurs. So, but yeah, I think that would be a fair concern. Is there anything that's like flying under the radar about this team, whether it's a strength, a storyline, whatever, that isn't receiving enough attention?
That's a good one. That's a tough. I would actually say John Collins. I don't think John Collins has got the publicity because I think the Bradley Beal thing happened so soon after the John Collins thing that the Bradley Beal became like the spotlight for like, oh, the Clippers got Bradley Beal. but it kind of went overlooked at like how much John Collins probably helps them. John Collins was really good last year, to the point that, I'll just say it, Utah shut him down because he was too helpful.
Yeah, I mean, that team got fined for tanking. Or I think they really got fined for letting Walker Kessler shoot threes, but that's neither here nor there.
By the way, my greatest subplot of the post-trade deadline was keeping a daily track on Walker Kessler just heaving threes. It was like, oh, Walker Kessler took 6 threes in the first half today? Yeah, I'm sure that was the real game plan going in. Like, okay, man. Like, so great, though. But John Collins last year, I know I said I do worry about the shooting, but mostly because of the right shots. John Collins last year shot 40% on threes. Didn't take a lot, took under 4 a game, but still shot 40%. He shot 37% the year before. Great around the rim. Good rebounder. Great offensive rebounder. Just played 2 straight years alongside Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler, who when the 3 of them were on the floor, the Utah Jazz were actually not bad. They were pretty. I'm not gonna say pretty good. They were good. They were a good, solid team with the 3 of them on the floor. So he knows how to play next to traditional big. He knows how to play alongside another high usage forward. I do think it's funny. You mentioned the John Collins screen stuff way earlier, like an hour ago when we started this John Collins screen. The fascinating thing for me with John Collins with the screens in particular was when I went through Utah footage of him. They had a lot of success with him and Walker Kessler playing double drag together with a ball handler, where Walker would hard roll, John would pop. And I kind of think that's a way for the Clippers to unlock a new thing offensively. The Clippers haven't done that as much with a true shooting 4 since they had Marcus Morris. And that's a couple years ago, back when, it wasn't great at the end of Marcus's Clippers tenure, but you go back to the 21 playoffs, Marcus was incredible. And that's the thing I think they're going to try to unlock again is we have this 6'9", 3-point shooting 4 who we get him in double drag with Zoo and James, and you got Kawhi parked in the corner. We could do all these sorts of things to get easy shots. So I kind of think that's the thing. John is just very fascinating to me. And I know I've said that word a lot, but like, I still think we don't know what he is. He's what, 8 years into the league, and I don't think we still know what John Collins is. Like, he has these years where he shoots very well from 3, and he finishes around the rim great, and he does great roller, great rim threat, good shooter, but it's never been all together, especially with defense. And if the Clippers can get that, and they've had a good track record of bringing stuff out of guys in recent years, I'm genuinely very interested to see the type of season he could have.
I do wonder kind of how much the Hawks' trajectory when he was there set him back, because they kept going through these phases where when you look at the perimeter personnel they surrounded with, then having him play next to like the types of bigs that he was playing next to, or even some of like the non-shooters on the perimeter, it felt like it constantly warped and marginalized what his offensive role could be. And it feels like it took him a while to at least adapt, where maybe Utah, he found it, and then also Will Hardy was definitely like they run more creative offensive stuff there. But I feel like it took him a while to adapt to just like, oh, let me find more of a like stability from not being someone who either is, one, going to have the ball in his hands a ton, or two, be the primary screener. And I say all this stuff with like his shooting. Like when you look at cleaning the glass, like he's always just in the upper echelon of percentiles, with the exception of that final year in Utah where it was his absolute nadir. So he's always been like a good shooter, but I don't know that he's always looked super comfortable in the offensive roles that he's been put into.
The only one, the Clippers, this Clippers team is like an interesting mix of like John Collins archetypal stops too. Oh, you have this ball dominant point guard who can facilitate. Yeah, he played with that guy in Atlanta. Well, he's on the Clippers in James Harden. Oh, he played next to a traditional big in Utah and also in Atlanta. He's here too. And we like it's like this weird mix of things where he's seen similar type of things, but he hasn't played it all together in one spot. And I just think like he's going to be 28. Like if he's going to have the best year of his career, it's going to be now, and that might be it. Like they're going to have to figure it out, especially because he's playing for a new contract. Like, I know we always, the contract year thing and everything, but it's a big deal. That's also, I know it's going, like, turning back the clock a little bit, but, like, that could be the thing that undoes the Clippers. How many of these guys are in contract years?
Oh, yeah. James Harden's forever in a contract year now.
That man lives in a contract year. It could be, that quite literally could be an undoing. You get a lot of guys who, if they start out slow, you might end up getting, all right, well, time to play for myself in my next deal. Not saying that's going to happen, but...
No, but I mean, it is you're looking at like Bradley Beal probably still, and there's also that stigma, whereas like Bradley Beal now, yes, he was bought out, and once you take less, you can never get back. Like Brook Lopez, remember way back when he signed for the biannual with was that the Lakers, and then, or was it the Bucks at the end of, whatever it was, and then like he builds up his value from there. Like that arc is so rare, and so will Bradley Beal have that mindset? Like you said, James Harden is like still kind of fighting a stereotype, particularly in the postseason, and he's living in a contract year. John Collins is, I think a lot of people consider him close to like outmoded, just where it's a pure 4. That, yeah, the Clippers might be built to let him play the 5, but like you don't really want him playing the 5. So we probably don't give enough credence to that stuff. Especially, I'm really like data driven. Like I'm a pragmatist when it comes to the on-court stuff. Like I love the off-court drama or the extracurriculars. I should say the drama related to the on-court stuff, but I probably don't give enough like weight to the whole like the personalities or the contract year stuff or like the voices in the locker room who talks on defense and stuff like that.
It's funny because I have as you mentioned, I cover the Sparks, and in talking with people, they have a first-year head coach in Lynn Roberts who's this very much like X's and O's offensive genius. But then when I was talking to people, part of the reason that they were so sold on her wasn't because of anything X's and O's. It was basically how she could talk to people and get like a group of human beings and people to buy into a similar ideal. So like we tend to always think of like, oh, coaching, X's and O's. You got to tell them exactly this. But like it's also like the massaging of egos and personalities and bringing, like you become like a therapist.
Right.
Like it's very fascinating. The more you're around it and the more you realize like, okay, like, yeah, knowing where to be in pick and roll coverage is very important, but also how do you convey that to someone without losing them to where now they feel belittled or less than. So you become almost like the soothsayer to where you're trying to have to manage all these people and all these individuals to get them to buy into a collective. And the one phrase I always keep going back to is basketball team, like all sports teams around the world, it's an ecosystem. And if one thing crumbles, it can bring the whole thing down.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason. I made fun of Udonis Haslem having a roster spot in Miami for so long, or Derrick Temple being in Toronto, but like they do serve a purpose for stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, Justin, this team is fully healthy, so that includes Bogdanovic. What's the 10-man rotation look like in terms of, it doesn't have to be the exact order, but do we agree? I think that it's John Collins, Bradley Beal in the starting lineup with James Harden, Kawhi, and Zoo.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, yeah.
How do we build it out? Who are the 5 like key reserves from there?
Derrick. Oh, my God. This is like, okay, so Derrick and Brook for sure, because they're going to have to play. Kris, I would say, is probably 8. Oh, actually, which Kris? Kris Paul probably be 8. Kris Dunn 9. And I think it comes down to Nico and Bogey. So last year they protected Nico a lot for minutes. I think we might see something similar. Nico, I think, is their locker room guy. So he might not have to play that much. And also,
it's weird because I view him as better than, I know his stat line's never going to show it, but like I view him as, if he's a locker room guy, he's one of those locker room guys that feels like they could still play. Kind of like a Kenrich Williams in OKC, who's much younger, obviously, but still.
Oh, Nico is so valuable to them on the court. Like if you, oh man, stats really do not do Nico Batum any justice whatsoever. Because you'll just watch him play and you're just like, this guy's never in the wrong spot. Like if there's a defensive breakdown and Nico gets mad at someone or like annoyed at someone, I'm like, all right, that player really screwed up for Nico to get that annoyed or whatever. So yeah, Nico's just such, to not kill the phrase, a consummate professional. Just understands what it takes at every level. But I think it would come down to him and Bogey, because it's going to be like, what do you need on that given night? Do you need Nico's size with his floor spacing, rebounding, ball movement, shooting, high IQ, or do you need Bogey for his shooting, but as a bigger guard to where he's able to do that type of stuff? Because Nico can play the 5. That's like their big thing, is Nico's their 5 in small ball lineups. But how much do you need small ball? You have Brook Lopez now. So I don't know. I mean, I'd probably say it comes down between Nico and Bogey. So I think the first 9 are pretty much like there. But then after that, it's probably going to be like, all right, what do we need tonight? Or in this, like, what do we need in this lineup right now?
This is always, to some extent, matchup dependent, but what winds up being their go-to crunch time unit? Is it just the starting 5, or do you see 1 or 2 spots that Ty will futz and fiddle with?
I think you'll see James, Kawhi, Zoo for sure. Mm-hmm. One of Brad and John, depending on who they're playing. Actually, Brad's probably closing regardless. So then it probably comes down to like John and then Derrick, John and Kris Dunn, John and Chris Paul. If you need an extra ball handler, like
so you think John Collins is kind of the spot that would be more malleable?
Yeah, because I think they're gonna keep Brad on the floor in crunch time, because as you know, no disrespect to John Collins, it's Bradley Beal. Like, you have this all-star level, high-level offensive player, and you could just kind of go from there. Now, will they be small if they take John Collins off the floor for anyone but a Derrick Jones or a Nico or someone? Yeah, but I kind of don't think that's like the killer for them. It will be interesting to see if they would they ever roll with Brook Lopez as a closer over Zoo if they thought they might need more spacing.
Okay.
Like for shooting aspect wise. But Zoo does so many extra things that I just don't think that would be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kawhi, Harden, and Zoo would be the ones locked in stone. I think being diplomatic, it feels like Bradley Beal has to close, because if that becomes a trend where he's not closing, we talked about the dynamics of being in a contract year. I feel like that's something that could also play a role in undermining the roster.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can't kill Bradley Beal's confidence, you know? Like, you might need him for a first round series.
Is there a weirdo lineup you want to see Ty try this year?
Yes. And I have thought about this. So at times last year, he actually, and I can't believe this is a sentence coming out of my mind again, he played Kawhi and Derrick as like the 2-3 in some combination at times. And that like fascinated me, because they leaned into like this, all right, our offense with Kawhi is good, but let's make our defense so swarming that like we can just get away with anything. I think next year they're not going to play this lineup, but I want to see it so bad, where it's like Brook Lopez, Ivica Zubac, Kawhi Leonard, Derrick Jones, and like Kris Dunn, or probably Chris Paul, because you need the ball handling point guard out there. And I would just kill to see that one time, to where you have like this pick and pop between Chris Paul and Brook Lopez, but also you have like this rolling threat of Zoo, the threat of Kawhi, and then you got Derrick, who can just play on the ball defensively with 2 rim protectors. Now, granted, you're probably playing just a pure zone defense, but I just want to see it one time, just to see what it would look like. Because when I wrote about Brook Lopez's fit, I did say I don't think you'd ever see Brook and Zoo play together, but I don't think it's crazy to see it for like 2 minutes here and there, like once every like couple weeks.
Well, I had the same lineup, except I wanted Kris Dunn, Derrick Jones Jr., Kawhi, Zubac, and Lopez. So I didn't have Chris Paul.
Listen, it's those 4 and the Kris. That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's all. Honestly, you could throw out triple big too. Like, you want
Kawhi
to 2. Let's go Collins and Zubac and Lopez.
Yeah.
I mean, your spacing will be fine on offense during that. I don't know what your defense look like, or how you're supposed to, like, Kawhi, and then who would be, if you're actually trying to round out that lineup, is it Harden has to be the next best option there, or do you lean
It'd probably be James, right? Because like you need an actual like head of the snake type thing who could
maybe you could go with, if you think Beal can defend anything at the point of attack, though, maybe you go with Beal. Harden can't guard the 4 in that lineup.
No. You just, yeah. So yeah, maybe Brad, that would actually be fun. That would, like, who cares, man? Like, sometimes you got to get a little bit wonky, and I think that's what they should try sometimes. Now, like I said, you don't do it like, oh, here's an 8-minute stint of this lineup, but can I see it for like 2 minutes just to see what it would look like against do it against like Charlotte, a game where you're like, all right, the other 46 minutes we have to take seriously, but for these 2 minutes, let's see what we got.
All right, so how many games do you see this team winning, and where do you see them winding up in just the Western Conference in general?
When I looked at the schedule a couple weeks ago, I originally tweeted out that I went for a very conservative number. And of the 80 games that they have on the schedule, because obviously we don't know what 2 of them are going to be, which, by the way, is still very strange to say that. Like, it's not an 82 game. It's an 80 game plus 2 random games at some point in December.
Hey, it could be an 83-game season for them if they really care about the NBA Cup.
Hey, their NBA Cup group's actually, it's kind of winnable for them.
Will they be going for it, though? # going for it.
If I know one thing about Ty Lue, he wants to be in Las Vegas. So he will be trying to get there.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, this might be the underdog for the NBA Cup is what team wants to get to Las Vegas. But I think I conservatively pegged them at 51 wins, and that's just because I baked in some injuries, and then like their schedule has some like really tough stretches because they're hosting the All-Star game this year. And there's like I want to say there's like a stretch post All-Star break that is like pretty tough. Where is it? Okay, so their post All-Star break stretches versus Denver, so they're at home actually right after the All-Star break. But then it's at Lakers on the second night of a back-to-back, versus Orlando, versus Minnesota, versus New Orleans, at Golden State, and then they end up going through like these weird stretches throughout the season of like long road trips. So I think I penciled them in at 51 because they have 15 back-to-backs, all this other extra stuff, injuries. Kawhi's not going to play a full year just because of the back-to-backs. But I might actually amend that. I think they get to 53.
It's weird to think of them winning one extra game with all the talent that they added. Also,
right.
I understand how stuff played, but it'd be weird. So, 53 sounds right. I haven't gone through my win predictions yet. Is there a team, though, non-Oklahoma City division, let's just ask that, like that's either a fascinating or a particularly tough matchup when viewed through the lens of a playoff series for them? Is it Denver again for you? Is someone else snuck in there? Maybe Houston, Minnesota, another team?
They really struggled with Houston last year, but
Siri didn't get that, Justin.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, believe me, a lot of the people on the Clippers didn't get it either because they were still very confused at how that happened. But Houston's kind of obviously with the Durant trade altered their chemistry a little bit in terms of like on court. So it's still probably Denver. Like it's still probably just Denver because obviously Nikola Jokic. They still have Jamal Murray. Still have Aaron Gordon who traumatized them. Believe me, that was the most wild thing I've ever seen in person. One of the most incredible. I've never seen an entire arena of beat writers just try to figure out if it actually was a good shot, which was like incredible. We all sat there like from both sides, Denver and LA, just like, I think he did. No, I think he did get that. Like no one knew. It was great.
It was just one of those moments too so I'm watching from home where it's like audible gasp. Like actual out loud. It's just insane.
Because when the Jokic's shot went up, everyone realized it had no chance. So there was like a brief second where everyone was like, "Oh, overtime," and then like he caught it and dunked it, and you're just like, "Oh no, that was after the buzzer." And then like you started seeing like frame by frame in the arena on like the Halo board, and you're just like, "Oh, this is really close." And then they showed one frame, and you went, "Oh my God, he actually dunked, like he got it. Like that's crazy." And like I'll never forget that because even afterwards, and I know this is like a side tangent, but even afterwards in the media workroom and into it, there was like 30, 40 people and everyone's talking and I'm just sitting there like pounding out my article for the game and doing transcriptions and someone just goes, man, I like, that's, yeah, could the Clippers have done this differently with this lineup and this? And I just yelled out, he just missed it so good. Like, what do you do? Like they played great defense. It just didn't matter. Like at the end of the day, but Denver's probably the team. I am interested to see how Denver does with Cam Johnson there, because as not good as MPJ was at times in that series, he still killed them. Like, he still shot 40% from three, and I'm genuinely interested to see, like, the Cam Johnson fit. He should be a seamless fit, but Cam Johnson's also been injury prone. MPJ played a lot last year, so I don't know. But that's the one team where I'm like, that's a tough matchup for the Clippers. If it happens in the playoffs again, which it probably will, because that's what the gods are going to deem for the end of time, it's either Clippers Dallas or Clippers Nuggets until we all die. That's what it is.
This was great. Thank you for giving me 90-plus minutes of your time, the longest look ahead we've had yet.
I'm sorry.
Season.
That is way too long.
Awesome. Are you able just to tell our listeners and viewers, subscribers, audience, where they can find you and all the great work that you do?
You can follow me on Twitter it's at FLYBYKNITE. If you're on Blue Sky, it's flybynight, same spelling, .bsky.social. If you want to follow me on Substack, it's justinrusso.substack.com. I'm actually, after I get done with you, I got to write about the Sparks game from last night, because while I was covering Angel City, I actually had that on the laptop, so I need to end up writing. The Sparks are still alive for the playoffs, oddly enough. They keep surviving, and it's great. If they don't make the playoffs, it'll be 5 straight years without a playoff berth, and they desperately need one.
Justin, thank you so much for all your time. You do great work. Everyone, I'll have the link to his Substack in the podcast and YouTube description. I don't know how you cover so much stuff as in-depth as you do, but I super appreciate it. Thank you for coming back, and rest assured, as you know by now, I'll be pestering you again in the future.
That's fine. No problem, man. And I do it because I'm a sicko. If I didn't have it, I don't know what I'd be doing,